explain it as like we're kind of sitting at base camp of Everest. We've done the hard work. We've really built out the policies, the procedures, and the systems. And, we invested into the right people, and we're just sitting at base camp waiting for that weather window to just climb to the top.
Welcome to another episode of the Growth League podcast. I'm here with my guest, Michael Klassen, who is the Director of Brand Development for Joey's Franchise Groups, and his side project, his baby, his love, Streets. I think, in our earlier conversations, you have a ton of different hats that you wear, get your fingers dipped in a lot of different areas. Tell us what you're focused on now. What are you working on?
Well, I would say it's definitely not a side project, as you just explained.
Sorry.
It is the project. But, marketing is fun in ways that I think the whole thing turns into almost a science experiment. And I think over the last 3 years of seeing a lot of growth with Streets, it's just testing new stuff and see what works. And 3 years into it, I think we're still trying to figure it out, but we've tried a lot of different methods, a lot of different resources, whether it's, kind of through third-party services or, all these different platforms, CRMs, all that good stuff. It's just, trying to figure out what works and then kind of sticking with it long enough until the next newest thing comes around, which in the digital marketing age, I feel like is every 6 months, it seems, right?
Totally. What problems does Streets solve for who, and why are you guys well positioned to solve those things?
I think Streets has carved out its own little niche in the way we do our food, meaning we haven't cornered ourselves in one specific food category.
Okay.
Like with a name like Streets, it's just like, what is that? Is that a burger place? Is that a pizza place? Is that a taco place? Is that a burrito? Like, what the hell is it? And I think it's given us the ability to pivot quickly onto food trends and that. And it's just like, I think we're going to become the place that just does the best of a bunch of different things. So obviously we've carved out the little tacos niche, but we're definitely not authentically Mexican, and we get ripped online all the time. These are authentic Mexican tacos, like blah blah blah. It's just like, who says they have to
go
be,
to
man?
Mexico
Like,
if you want that.
go to, like, is all pizza authentically Italian or Sicilian or wherever pizza was discovered? Which I think honestly pizza is traditionally Greek. I don't know. Don't beat me up for that. I don't know for my facts. I don't have ChatGPT in front of me to ask the question. But, and so we kind of put our own twists on these tacos. And it's just like, we pride ourselves on our fish taco. We have like a mango shrimp taco, but then we kind of get inspired by different cultures around the world. We have a piri-piri taco. We have a buffalo chicken taco, which is like clearly American. And then, a jerk taco, which, the Jamaicans coming in are probably going to be pretty pissed off because it's not, but the sauce we use is of a jerk flavor, right? So we've carved out a niche of doing it our way and being different from the rest. We have a lot of we get put into the competition with Casada and Mucho Burrito and all those type of authentic Mexican fast food chains, which we are not. And it's hurt us a lot of times because we sell tacos and burritos. A lot of times landlords, won't write leases to us if there is one of those locations already on premise. But, I'd say Streets is its own thing. And, as food trends come and go, for example, we're featuring a smash burger right now. We're like, okay, that's like way out of the wheelhouse of what we usually do. But it has by far been our best-selling feature we've ever done. And it might be end up on the menu indefinitely. So it's just like, hey, we've tested hot dogs. We've done like Asian skewers where, we kind of twist beef around and kind of do the teriyaki flavors and that type of stuff. We've tried so many different things. So again, not only with the marketing, figuring out what works, but also on the food side.
Yeah.
And slowly we're going to build this menu that just works. And we only have one burger on our menu, but it's one of the best burgers in town.
For those that don't know the concept and haven't heard of Streets before, like what's the underlying sort of common denominator of the brand? What is it meant? What is it meant to be in the world?
I think fun and disruptive, meaning like we're not scared to kind of push the envelope as far as, triggering people online. And it's helped and hurt us in a number of ways. But I'd say, there's a saying out there, no press is bad press or whatever. Right. And I mean, obviously, you take Budweiser as an example or whatever, like maybe there is such thing as bad press, but who knows? That might flip around, and like they might actually build a reputation and a community around what they obviously did with their what do you call it? What do you like their brand ambassador or whatever, right? Like, it hurt them short term with their very, right-winged conservative crowd that lives in the southern United States. But it's just like they might have gained a whole nother crowd in doing that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right.
So only time will tell. And I think streets, we definitely want to stay out of the political and the religious side of things, because that was one thing our football coaches or our media personnel always told us, is just like, hey man, don't talk about race, religion, or sex.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're good. Right. Yeah. So it's the same thing. We take that with streets, and we just try to be fun with it, try to be disruptive, and try to just get people talking about our brand.
Why did you feel compelled to start this brand and this organization and what it is today?
Well, I'm not going to take all the credit here. I definitely didn't start the organization. It is a family business that's been around for 40 years. Street's obviously been one of our newer brands.
I didn't know that. I thought, okay.
Educate
me on that.
Yeah, so my dad, Joe Klassen, started Joey's Seafood, actually right here in Calgary, downtown 17th Ave and 14th Street.
Institution. And,
had his struggles, startup, like why the hell would you start a fish and chip brand in Calgary, Alberta, in the prairies? It's just like, what good sushi places come out of, Calgary. So did that, struggled, him and my mom, like he was in the back, my mom was out front, and they grinded their asses off, man. And, after about 6 months of not making any money, they were ready to hang up the hats and decided to give it like one more go. And it just so happened that the right person, food writer, not a blog writer, this is pre-internet, but a legit food writer back when people actually read the newspapers, wrote a raving article about the place and the best fish and chips and all the good things that they were doing there. And, the next day they were lined up around the block. And within 2 or 3 years, they had 9 locations. And then 2 or 3 years after that, it was like they decided to franchise. And 10 years after that, they built their 100th store.
What?
So, and then Joey's obviously being around quite a bit. The demographic got a bit older and started kind of doing one of these based on just our customer base not visiting as frequently. And, I think a lot of brands go through that. So we decided we needed to come up with another concept. If we want to continue in the food business, it's just like, what do we got to do? So came up with another QSR called Joey's Urban.
Right.
This might have been back in 2010, 2011. And I just don't think the branding and the name was confusing. Joey's, what is that, a furniture store, or are they selling fish tacos? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so nobody really associated the Joey's Urban with the Joey's, because they're kind of trying to piggyback off the Joey's Seafood name with the Joey's Urban. And it just, understandably, just didn't work out.
Right.
So it's just like, we took our last couple remaining Joey's Urban stores. And this is kind of at the same time that I was getting involved. I was playing football, but I was working, in my off seasons, helping out. And we came up with the name Streets. So it's just like, let's get ourselves away from the Joey's a little bit and see if this thing can stand on its own 2 legs outside of it.
Yeah.
And open up a couple stores, open up a couple franchises, and then really, I want to say we saw our biggest growth in 2020 after COVID happened.
Interesting. Why?
I'd like to give myself all the credit, but I'm not going to. But that's when I started getting really involved. That's when I retired from football, got involved, and kind of just, again, my disruptive brain was just like, we need to change things up.
Yeah.
And found a place for lease, downtown Calgary, in the Beltline, Streets Beltline Kitchen. And I convinced my dad, I said, I'll raise the money. Let's get a store open, but let's build it my way.
Right.
I have a great colleague, Michael Llewellyn, and, between the two of us, we came up with a totally different look, a totally different vibe, atmosphere, all that stuff. Ultimately the same food. And we opened that one up, and then it's just like COVID happened, and a lot of our stores started getting busier because obviously a lot of dine-in places were closed.
Right.
So people were going more to QSRs, fast food.
Grab and go.
You know, it's not that people stopped eating out. They just
Right.
Why would you order? You go eat at Earl's, or you go eat at Joey Tomatoes, you go eat at Major Tom's, you go eat at these places because the food's good, but ultimately you go for the service and the atmosphere.
Yeah.
If people just want to eat, they're going to start looking at concepts like ours.
Right.
So we saw a 20-25% boost at a lot of our locations, because a lot of our locations were, kind of in the suburbs. People working from home, so now they're eating lunch and dinner at our places.
Right.
So we saw that boost, and then from there we were able to leverage our new look and just get the word out. And we really started hitting it hard on social media at that time, and I think just the word got out and people wanted to invest in the streets. So
That's awesome.
Beltline was our 8th location, and then in 2 short years we opened another 12.
Wow. So the concept took on,
and now I explain it as like we're kind of sitting at base camp of Everest. We've done the hard work, we've really built out the policies, the procedures, and the systems, and we invested into the right people, and we're just sitting at base camp waiting for that weather window to just climb to the top.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to come within the next year. We got hundreds of leads out there, and people are like, we're just trying to find locations at this point.
Yeah.
And once we do that, like, we got 2 stores coming up here that we take possession of June 1st. So that will be another 2 Streets locations and a Joey's Fish Shack. And then we just have a lot of people that are ready to move. So I think we'll be able to get 10 open in the next year. And then it's just like, okay, how fast can you build these things out moving forward?
Right. Based on your conversations with franchisee partners, both current and prospective, what are 1 or 2 of the things that intrigue them most about the concept? Because there's a lot of concepts that they can, build and be a part of. What's attracting people to Streets or Joey's?
I mean, a proof of concept, right? And that's one thing where we struggle a bit is like, we're at 21 stores, and like everyone's like, wow, you got 21 Streets locations. That's awesome. It's just like, no, we're still the small dogs, you know?
Right.
Like, we look at our competitors with hundreds of stores. So it's pretty easy for those people to find those brands, and like, okay, they obviously have, the groundwork laid out, and they've tested and proved out their model. But it's just, a lot of people, once they come see us and see what the team's up to, and like see how we're doing things, as well as walk into a store, we always explain it, me and my colleague, we always explain it as like, we want to become the most unfranchisable franchise.
What does that mean?
It means like the way we're building the stores, like you walk into an Opa, an Edo, Taco Time or whatever, they all look identical.
Yeah.
They feel identical. They're white, they're dry, they're just, you go for the food, that's it. You take your order. So we really hound our partners.
Love you, Taco Time.
I know, I shouldn't have thrown
No,
I shouldn't have thrown all the brands.
No, but I hear you, right? Because they traditionally, from my understanding of the franchisee world, is that they're trying to buy consistency, but you're taking a different spin on that.
Yeah, but you can be consistent as long as you're consistent on the product and hopefully the service. It's just like, can we make these things look like they're not part of a franchise?
Right.
So again, I'll bring it back to when we created Beltline, because the 7 stores that were built before that, they all looked the same. They all felt the same. It was all the same, artwork on the walls, whatever, stock images, that type of thing. It's just like, let's bring in a graffiti artist to graffiti this huge mural that's specific to that location.
Right.
So not even by the city, because hopefully we're opening multiple locations in the city, by the neighborhood.
Right.
So you walk into my store or any store that's built since the Beltline location, and it says, Streets West Lethbridge Kitchen, Streets Beltline Kitchen, Streets Fort Saskatchewan Kitchen, Streets Fort Mac Kitchen. And as well as like how we encourage our franchise partners to get involved in the community. So it's just like, how millennials and the ones younger than us like to spend their money. It's just like they want to support mom and pop. They want to support local. They want to support all these different initiatives. And it's just like, unfortunately, most franchise brands just don't fall into those categories.
Interesting.
They fall into the category that how we used to eat 10, 15 years ago. It's just like, I'm going to Chili's, I'm going to these big brands because I know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but we're, as a younger demographics, taking more risk and wants to venture more outside the wheelhouse. It's just like, we can be a franchise and be consistent on our product, but we can deliver this local feel.
Awesome. What things have you taken? Actually, before I ask this, I'm going to take a bit of a departure here because I like this is an awesome opportunity to talk football with a former ex-football player. Tell us a little bit about your playing career. I want to set the stage.
So fortunate enough, definitely wasn't highly touted. Leaving high school, I was, I'm 6'5", so I'm really tall, but I was about 195 pounds. And any college looking like, okay, unless you like got the best hands and are the fastest guy in the field, like, what position are you playing? You're just this tall, gangly kid, right? So, but I was strong, and I played on the line, even though I was skinny or whatever. And a buddy I was playing with, actually a good friend of mine, Tom Spolatini, who you may know the Spolatini name. They're infamous in Calgary for Spalombos, and then the time they spent on the Calgary Stampeders. So Tom Spolatini Sr. had a son, Tom Spolatini Jr., one of my best friends. We played in high school together, and the coach at the time, the Dinos, Blake Nill, happened to make it out to one of our practices, and I don't know if he saw me then or whatever, and then I got an invite to the North-South Bowl. I don't know if you remember that one. If you grew up in Calgary, I'm sure you were there. And didn't make the team because, there's one thing about politics. There's a lot, or football, there's a lot of politics involved. It's just like, who is this kid? Oh, we've already laid out all these positions. Didn't make the the North-South Bowl, the South team. But fortunately, I showed up enough that Blake Nill walked up to me and invited me to spring camp, the Dino spring camp. That was the next weekend. Okay. Did well enough there that handed me my letter of intention, my LOI, right? Yeah. That's what we called it. And I signed it. I'm like, well, I'm not going anywhere else. And honestly, at this point in my career, I did not want to play football. I didn't like it that much, dude. This is what, I was playing basketball, volleyball, the fun sports where you don't have to lay in an ice bath afterwards to recover. So anyway, spring camp comes along. And then kind of the summer, I was pouring concrete. Really didn't think too much of football. I think I was kind of hesitant whether or not I was going to play or not. One of my dad's buddies phones me up. He says, Mike, just give it a try for a year. It'll be the best time of your life. So went out to Dinos, red shirt my first year. Didn't play at all my second year because I was just still undersized, but I was in the weight room. I was doing all the right things. I was eating lots. So I went from 200 pounds to 250 to 275 by my third year. Then I got my chance to play. Did all right my third year, and then kind of blew it out my fourth year, had a great year. And then again, obviously it's just the combine comes around. Didn't get an invite to the national combine. I'm like, man, what's going on here? A lot of guys that got invited over me, but they had 4 years of playing under the belt. I had a year and a half or 2 years, right? So I was just this kind of behind the scenes guy that did his job, did well, but I had full plans on going back to university. I'm like, I'll probably, I still got 3 years eligibility left. Yeah. I'll go back, tear it up, and then I'll get the call up if this is what I want to do. Anyways, that happened to be the first year that the CFL did regional combines. Okay. So instead of just the 58 players that went to the national combine, which is not a lot when you're talking about 30 university football programs, plus all the NCAA players that are Canadian and can come, right? So they did this regional combine in Edmonton and Montreal. And there was always kind of a rumor that if you show out at the regional combine, you might get invited to the national combine the next week. Well, went to the regional combine, and that was one thing I was always good at. I was a good athlete, especially for my size. Went to the combine, absolutely destroyed everyone. I was probably 30, 40 pounds heavier than all the other defensive ends, and I was running faster than them, jumping further than them. So I ended up getting the call up to the national combine, lit it up again, and then the draft was about a month later. Really had no idea where I fit in because like up until 6 weeks ago, nobody knew who Mike Klassen was. Literally nobody, no coach or whatever. And then ended up getting picked up in the 4th round by Montreal, which was cool. And again, I think I went and got a job at Earl's Tin Palace for the summer. I'm just like, I'm not going out. I'm going back to the Dinos, man. I got 3 years left. I got half my schooling left. So, but then I went and talked to my coach, and he's like, Mike, just go out to training camp because you'll come back 10 times better player. Because that's one thing that the CFL teams allowed you to do was even if you got drafted, they can send you back to school. You don't lose eligibility, and then you can still come back the next year.
Right.
So full on plans to doing that. Went out to camp, struggled probably for my first 4 or 5 days. I almost went to bed in tears because I was like, I freaking suck. And then the rest of camp, and I played really well in the preseason games against other CFL teams, and I made the team and played all 18 games.
Jeez.
Which is rare for,
awesome.
A skill position or whatever. Usually Canadians are always just flagged as special teamers, right? But I got in on defense every single game. I wasn't a starter, but as you know, with linemen or whatever, there's a lot of rotation. So I was playing as much as the starters, racked up a few points. Montreal for 4 years, came back to Calgary for 1, and then Ottawa for 2.
That's
Two-time
awesome.
Grey Cup loser.
Hey man, you were in the dance, so that's all part. That's unbelievable. What from that experience, what have you kept or held on to and leveraged as kind of your superpowers in being a business leader, a marketing leader, a marketer?
Well, I'd say networking and just learning how to talk to people. Because it was one thing about football is CFL didn't pay that much or whatever, but you got in front of a lot of cool people because you go to these events or these charity dinners or you'd be able to talk to media a lot more than any other 22-year-old kid out there. I remember when I was a kid, my uncle was on the news. It's just we all sat down and watched him. Like, oh my goodness, uncle's gonna be on the news, kind of thing. It was crazy. But then that became a daily occurrence, and I used to sweat my balls off. Just oh, I got media after practice. What am I gonna say? What am I gonna say? And just we're talking right now, it's just I learned throughout my career. It's just the less you prepare, the more organic, the easier it becomes, because ultimately it's just a conversation. Right. You're asking me a question, and I'll answer it accordingly.
Right.
I don't have to think about my answers.
Right.
And then it just becomes a lot easier. So I got decent in being able to talk in front of a camera. So then when I started helping out with the restaurants, it was just it was easy for me to be that spokesperson and get in front of the camera, show the processes, and kind of be our brand ambassador, which really helped in the early days of the streets marketing. Did a lot of funny shit, just making a fool of myself, really. But I learned to not care, because the people that are making fun of you, they are nobodies, and the people closest to you just they'll always support you no matter what you put out there. So
now that you are heavily involved in multiple different avenues, but team is a big part of what you have to deal with every day, right? People and unique personalities, and what have you developed as your approach or your playbook in building teams, motivating them, empowering them? Tell me a little bit about that.
I think the biggest thing that people want is kind of the freedom to kind of work along their own schedule or whatever. It's just nobody likes a micromanager. Nobody liked a micromanager as a coach. And it's just maybe a lot of this I learned by having different coaches, right? Mm-hmm. You have the coach that's down your neck all practice long, literally in film session, just yo, you stepped wrong here. Oh, you took too many steps here. Why you laid off the ball? Just micromanaging, nitpicking every little thing you do. So it's just that's the last thing I want to become as a manager. So as I started to manage, now I'm starting to manage my own marketing team. It's just you give them the freedom to not only not be scared to bring up ideas, because I feel a lot of bosses out there restrict ideas within their work environment because people are scared to speak up.
Yeah.
But just the first thing I tell any new employee is just there's no such thing as a dumb idea. I mean, to a point, right? But There's no such thing as a dumb idea. So it's just like, if you have an idea, talk to us. And even if it's not a great idea, a lot of times not great ideas quickly evolve into an awesome idea.
Yeah.
And it's when you have 3 or 4 people, like kind of like, you know, we have a couple billboards that we're going to be putting up around the city. This is just an example. This has happened this week. We have a couple billboards that we're going to put up a campaign, and it's just like, hey, what should we do? And it's just like the ideas start flowing, but more importantly, they start evolving into the end result, which is going to be great. But if I had to sit there by myself, the idea would probably stop at like okay or good. Oh, yeah. You know, or if one person had to come up with an idea, like it would never get to that great or excellent.
Right.
It's just like, you know, why are humans humans? Because we're humans is because of our collaborative work environment. You know, not one person in the world could make this microphone from scratch.
Right.
And even if a guy knows how to put the pieces together, it's just like, hey, who sourced the steel?
Right.
Who invented the electrical components? Who did all this, right? And that's what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom, is because we're able to collaborate on ideas and inventions, and that's why we become as advanced as we are.
No, that makes sense. So you embrace the obviously the team component of it, but I think you've pulled out the nugget that, you know, the rock gets you know, shined into the emerald it is, or the diamond it is, through that iteration and multiple perspective. And I guess your job as a leader, you're saying, is to create space for that, to make people feel safe to do that.
Yeah, to create a work environment where everyone feels comfortable, that it doesn't matter if you're talking to somebody above you or below you or way above you, that they can voice their ideas or concerns, right? If somebody has a problem with somebody in the office or the workspace or with something somebody said, it's just like you could probably nip it in the butt right away just by attending to it. Yeah. But if somebody's holding on to that because they're scared to come forward with it, then it's just like that's not a healthy work environment. And the healthier the work environment, the more people want to work for you.
Right.
Probably the harder people will work for you. And then ultimately the more you can end up rewarding them.
Yeah.
In probably most likely a monetary sense, but I mean, ultimately, like, you want to build a good team that's around you for the long term, right? Like, it takes a long time to get people trained up to the way you want them to think, to the way you want them to work, to all the systems, because, you know, marketing's not just printing flyers or putting ads out in newspapers anymore. There's a lot of platforms out there that you need to learn to, you know, how do we figure out this algorithm? How do we run ads here? Like, where do we want to spend our money? Like, it takes a while to get somebody to that point. So the last thing you want is turnover. And it's any job too. You know, we can talk minimum wage jobs at the restaurant. Like, any new employee, by the time they're fully trained, you're probably like $4,000 or $5,000 invested in them. You know, as a regional manager, which is the job I used to have within the Joey's group, was more of an operational role. Also always did the marketing on the side. It's just like, it would take you 18 months to get a regional manager trained up. So if you have a regional manager quitting every 6 months, you never get to the point where you want to be, and you're just losing, the money's walking out the door every time.
So it's just such a good truth to reiterate and bring out, that, you know, not only for the purposes of culture and, you know, having a great team experience, like, at the end of the day, it reflects tremendously on the P&L. You know, facilitating this team-based approach, making people feel good, feel supported, like they have an impact, that directly translates into dollars and cents, right?
Yeah, and you can talk again on the bottom end of things, like, you know, we're talking top end corporate level, but like even at the store level, even at the customer level, it is 5 times more expensive to get a new customer than to retain an existing one, which will bring me into a big spiel about, like, you know, how to make sure you're doing all the right things at the store level, marketing wise, and more importantly, like the customer service aspect of things. But you see it everywhere, every industry, you know, minimum wage to the highest of the high. Like, people cost money.
Yeah. So they're the most important asset, and need to be treated accordingly, right? Kind of in your playing career and football career, there was a pretty intimidating challenge you were faced with, or some may call it a weakness in terms of size, but you found ways to work within that, overcome that. What would you define as the equivalent example of your marketing career? What do you either suck at now or sucked at one point, and what has been your approach in terms of living within that and relying on other people, or what would be your biggest weakness as a marketing leader?
My biggest weakness is like my patience level, probably. Okay. Like every time I see something new, like I'm like the squirrel guy, Right. Like I see something new, somebody else is doing something else, and it's just like instead of sticking with what we're testing right now, it's just like I want to jump onto that new system or that new way of doing things. But, fortunately, I've hired somebody who's like not her main job or whatever, but she does a great job keeping me organized.
Right.
I would say that's my biggest weakness, is like
chasing the shiny object.
Yeah, exactly. And with marketing, it's pretty easy because, every night you're scrolling LinkedIn or Instagram, and it's just like some new service that somebody's offering that's supposed to boost sales by 20%, right? And a lot of it's just a bunch of false advertising, but like, and then on the other hand, it's just like, why aren't we looking into that? So it's just like, where do you draw that line of just like, what are we testing or what are we just sticking with to make sure it either works or doesn't work before we jump onto the new project?
Totally. And that topic comes up all the time with me and our team and some of the client partners we work with. And we've often described that scenario as the doom loop, right? The random acts of marketing. Putting you in a position where you never get to benefit from optimization cycles and data over time to, so, you've put a system around you in the form of someone more skilled in this area and I think that's the problem with weaknesses as marketing leaders. There's no problem having weaknesses, but it's not having the awareness of those and understanding the impact it has on ultimately the bottom line, and then putting the mechanisms in place. So it's a great example. Right now, for whether it be on the Joey side or streets, what is the biggest, not macro or external factor that's causing you grief and challenge, but what is the biggest challenge right now that you're trying to overcome together as a team in this competitive landscape that you're in?
Our biggest challenge, I would say, being part of a franchise, is getting buy-in from our franchise partners, right?
Okay.
There's only so much we can do on their behalf from a location that might not be in the same location as them.
Right.
So that's why digital helps in a lot of these ways, because just like it's easy to target the areas around their store and do all these things. But our biggest challenge is getting buy-in so they understand the importance of what they can do on their own.
Right.
And it doesn't always have to cost money. We always describe it as like it just costs a bit of your time, because you have to get out of your store. You have to get in front of people. Get in your local community, set up business lunches, set up catering jobs, set up hot lunch programs with schools. We have a fundraising program we just rolled out as well, and it's just like, but if our franchise partners don't take these tools we've created for them, they're not going to have the same success as the stores that do. And if I take our 21 streets locations and rank them from the highest sales to the lowest, I guarantee there's a direct correlation with their direct involvement in the community. It could just be as easy as like sponsoring different events around the city, or sponsoring like the local junior hockey team, or a skateboard event, or local fairs, festivals. But a lot of it you can do on a daily basis, as far as like just sampling your food.
Right.
It's one thing to do a flyer drop in the community and give everyone a free taco if they come in, but people are taking it and throwing it straight in the recycling bin. The redemption rates suck. But the redemption rate on me seeing you on the street within a few block radius of my store and me handing you a taco.
Yeah.
Like, Caleb, well, obviously I probably wouldn't know your name, but like, hey, dude, here, try this taco. We just opened up down the street. You try the taco. Wow, this is a pretty good taco. Where are you guys located? We probably have a 50% redemption or higher on people coming back off of that. And if all that cost me was the cost it takes to make a fish taco or whatever taco flavor we gave you, like that's the cheapest type of marketing you can ever do.
Right.
In the restaurant business, people like to throw numbers around. I don't know if you've ever figured it out, like the average cost per customer acquisition.
Right.
But we like to say it's around like $22. If I'm getting you as a customer for the cost of a free taco that costs me $1.75 to make,
Right.
that's a lot cheaper than $22.
Right. Right. Well, that makes sense. And I think it's tied back to your experience about being present and being, person to person. And in this digital age, I think over-reliance on those platforms is an issue. But the marriage between it and what has created us away from animals, which is connectivity and collaboration, I think maybe the marriage there needs to be explored a little bit more for true impact, right?
Exactly.
So that's funny. With teams come conflict and disagreement and challenge, and what role have you played, and what's your approach to facilitating resolve or mitigating them in the future? How do you deal with team conflict?
Luckily, I would say I don't have to deal with that like really on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. I mean, my team is still pretty young and fresh, so maybe they just don't have the cojones to really stand up. But ultimately, it's just like, if I have an idea and then somebody else has an idea or whatever, like right away, it just goes out to a vote. Okay. It's just like, or like, let's try both. Let's run an A/B. Like if it's just an idea as far as like a creative, if we have, for example, again, I'll bring these billboards. We have 8 weeks of billboards at our disposal. Now I can run 8 weeks of the same creative, or I can run 8 creatives for 1 week each.
Right.
Or I can run 4 creatives on 2 billboards for 4 weeks, right? So it's just like, if we have a couple of great ideas floating out there, I have no problem in being like, hey, let's put the creative over there. Let's put a creative over there. Yeah. And then hopefully we have a call to action on each. So it's just like we can at least directly see the results. Yeah. Yeah. So, I'd say like there's a lot of times where I have an idea and somebody might have a better idea. And it's just kind of, pulling back on your ego a little bit and just like understanding that idea might be a bit better. But again, I feel like this idea gets thrown out, this idea gets thrown out. Okay, how can we either combine the ideas, or which one can we evolve to be the best idea?
Seems pretty logical.
With a team of 4 or 5 people, plus the rest of the people in the office, it's easy to get an idea of which one's better. Right. Another example, we're in the middle of updating our menu boards. Okay. Totally new design, new menu items. Like we're looking at kind of almost a rebrand for streets. Not a rebrand, but like we're going to throw out some new menu items and a different way of doing things. And right off the bat, we came up with like 3 totally different directions or different designs of the menu boards. The first thing I went and did was I took all 3 designs around to everyone in the office. I said, which one reads clear? Which one do you like better? All these other things. Yeah. And then like right away, you can start, focusing on the right way to go. Yeah. So it's just bringing multiple people into the conversation is the easiest way to resolve conflict, because I can sit there and be like, my way's the best, and we test this taco flavor, and he's like, no, I want to try this one. It's easy to just throw them on the menu for a month and to see which one actually outperforms. Totally. And whoever loses, just like, I was wrong. The people have spoken. Totally. And it's just a numbers game, right?
Yeah. Bringing more people into the scenario in matters of conflict or challenge, I think, is the nugget there, and not what most people do, right? Most people try to fix it or figure it out in a vacuum in isolation, but it's through the power of network that gets done. That's interesting.
And that brings us back to like the micromanaging boss, right? Who knows all and wants it done his way.
Yeah. I oftentimes think micromanagement is more just a reflection of that person's inability to deal with people, right, and gain perspective of other, of other people's way of looking.
Probably an only child.
Or only child, exactly.
Only child syndrome.
Yeah, funny. We got another child.
I apologize if you're an only child.
No, yeah, exactly. I've never met a normal only child. So no, I'm just kidding.
Sorry to all you only childs out there.
So other than like channel specific metrics like impressions and reach and likes and follows and that type of thing, how do you construct your guys' scoreboard, using another football motif, to really get a glance or an understanding at a glance of like, are you doing the right things or you're not doing the right things? Like describe the business case that ultimately tells you, hey, we're doing the right thing or not.
And that's probably the hardest part with restaurant marketing, right? Is we don't have a way of exactly narrowing down the exact number. Right. Until you can track people's phones and literally see, I mean, obviously geofencing is a thing where you can literally track people's phones, but what about all the other customers that happen to walk in or come through another channel, right? So like if you ran ads for clients on social media, you know how much ad spent you spent to then gain a client. Right. Every time you gain a client, a lead or whatever.
Right.
You know, we run ads on Facebook and Instagram, and even if we put a call to action, like, you know, if we're doing a deal or whatever, we know how many people might have redeemed that offer through our mobile app because we can see how many times the voucher code was used. Right. But we don't know how many people are necessarily coming into store for that offer or how many people are coming to store just because they saw that deal. Yeah. So this is honestly been one of our biggest challenges is really narrowing it down. Right. And we're starting to, and the best way to do that again is to have a certain call to action or, you know, a lot of the specials we roll out, for example, at Streets, you know, we won't run in-store promos on that special.
Isolate those.
Because you don't want to market to existing customers. I want to make sure you came in for that 3 for $12 taco deal.
Right.
But how many new customers did we acquire? We don't have the metrics on that because it might be the same guy just coming back every day.
Right. How do you balance? You know, with QSR specifically, there's a majority of the customer base are value based people, right? They're influenced by promotion X by brand X and promotion Y by promotion Y. What are some of the things you've done to establish sort of an untethering of that, always needing to promote? So, you know, brand, loyalty, community.
Again, I'd bring it back to the 3 pillars. I don't know if this is just a me thing, but the 3 pillars to a successful restaurant is, you know, food, service, and atmosphere. Right. You know, we're not the McDonald's or the fast food place that people are 100% value driven. Right. People come back because, you know, we make our salsas in-house. We slow cook our meats in-house. We batter and fry our fish, and everything's made to order. You know, it's not sitting in a bunch of warming trays. So we're not fast food, but we're not fine dining. We're not a dine-in restaurant. So if you want people to pay full price for your food all the time and not just come in for the 3 for $12 tacos because they're cheap tacos, you got to establish the customer service and that people want to come back. Ultimately, right? And that comes down to, I say, the best way to market your restaurant is to have your operations in check. And again, that's your 3 pillars, right?
Right.
Follow the recipes and procedures so the food tastes good and go above and beyond what you'd expect at a fast food place. You walk up to the counter at a fast food place, what would you like to order? Okay, here you go. Here's your ticket. We'll call your name. That's it.
Yeah.
How can we go above and beyond? Because we're still a counter service place. So it's just like, you know, talking to your customers, really helping them through the order process, right? Like, can I recommend anything? Essentially like what you'd expect at a fine dining establishment, but I'm standing on the other side of the counter. Yeah. And then it goes beyond that. Instead of just calling somebody's name, maybe take the 2 seconds to actually run the food out to them. Right. Ask them if they need anything else. Right. You know, ask them if they want a refill or assure them that they're free to grab a free refill. Yeah. And then maybe if they're still sitting there or maybe they're drinking a beer, we are licensed, cheapest beer in town. Yeah, there you go. It
is Cinco de Mayo today on the day of recording, so thank you for being here, by the way.
That's hence the shirt. I don't normally dress like this. Well, actually, I probably normally do. But anyways, and then it's just like, you know, as the customer's departing, it's just like, can I clear the dishes for you? Right. Can, you know, and make sure that it's a friendly goodbye, right? So there's so many different steps of service that even though we're a QSR, you know, some people would say fast food, but we're a quick serve restaurant. You know, there's things you can do to go above and beyond to secure that person coming back because your business is only as valuable as returning customers. Right. You know, 70% of people walking through your doors are never coming back. Right. If I can bump that metric even a couple percent in my favor, sales go up exponentially because the lifetime value of a customer is worth more than
You know what? I think what you're drawing on here, which is so worthy of reiterating, is that there's so many marketers and marketing systems that are focused on acquisition of a first-time customer, and then they believe that job is done. But
No.
I think the reality is marketing is holistic, and it's ultimately a reflection of what is actually happening in the weeds at the operational level, and it has to extend beyond acquisition, but be ingrained into the advocacy stages of the funnel as well. And those holistic traits of marketing, the way of looking at that is what you're describing here, and it needs to be done more.
Yeah.
Like across industry, restaurant, retail, manufacturing, whatever, marketing is immersive across the whole customer experience.
Yeah, because if you're not doing the right things on a daily basis, your sales will either become stagnant, meaning like, yeah, the marketing that we do maybe from the corporate side is bringing new mouths to feed every day.
Right.
But unless they're coming back, your sales are going to be completely stagnant or eventually drop off.
Right.
Because eventually you're going to saturate that area and you're just going to be known as a shitty restaurant
Right.
that people don't like to go eat at.
Yeah.
But you see the successful restaurants, like it took us 3 years at the Beltline location to really build to where we need to be making great money.
Right.
And that was doing the right things for 3 years consistently. We are a QSR restaurant and we have a 4.7 Google rating. Who does that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right? But it's not the food. The food is great,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it's the customer service and the friendliness that they're coming back to. The fact that we remember a lot of our regulars' names,
Right.
right? We understand the importance of a lifetime customer.
Right. No, that's huge. With the Joey's group, was a focus on those types of things always in place, or was some of that your thumbprint?
I want to say it was initially. They might have, my dad, he's a busy guy. He's an entrepreneur. He has a lot of other businesses and projects going on or whatever. And I think he took a little too far of a step back from the day-to-day of the Joey side of things. And maybe there wasn't that passion in it as much with the team. And I feel like, yeah, I mean, I'd like to take all the credit or whatever, but it's not just me, but it's creating that environment that people get excited about helping franchise partners and doing the right things. And ultimately, like, we can't do everything for our franchise partners. We can roll out all these systems, and if they're not going to do it, they're not going to have success.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the biggest battle, because the first people they blame when they're not having success is us, is the franchisor. I'm not making any money. I'm not doing any sales. And it's just like, well, are you doing this, that, the other thing, all the things that you could be doing on top of what we're doing?
Right.
Maybe our marketing works so well.
Yeah.
And the only reason there's customers walking through your door is because it's a first-time customer every single day.
Exactly.
But ultimately, like, you need to make sure you're getting 30, 35% people.
Yeah, you're responsible for turning that 70%, as you mentioned, first-timers or only-timers, rather, and swinging the percentage a couple points. It's on you.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys work, actually, back to Joey's, what excites you most? Because it's a legacy brand, it's a long-term brand, but all we have is to look in the future. What excites you most about that brand and the kind of the rebirth that we're starting to see of it?
Of the Joey's?
Yeah.
For the first time in 15 years, we're opening new stores again. So obviously we've created enough excitement. We've implemented a new menu that's completely different, that's kind of targeting a different demographic, right? Like, for the last 20 years, the menu is still just fish and chips and whatever else you could batter and kind of throw in the fryer. But it's just like, let's put a couple vegetable options. Let's put an awesome chicken sandwich on there. Let's put some healthier stuff on there. So now, when grandma wants to go eat her fish and chips, there's at least something for everyone to go and try. And then once they try it, if they like it, hopefully they come back.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to execution and how well our franchise partners execute to try to get them back. And a lot of them, I will admit, don't do a great job.
Yeah.
And people don't come back.
Yeah.
And it reflects in their Google scores, which obviously hurts, again, first-time customers coming through. Like, when was the last time you went and ate at a restaurant that had under a 4-point Google rating, right?
Yeah.
People look into that stuff. People read reviews.
Yeah.
So if you can't secure these awesome reviews,
What are you going to do?
people aren't coming in even the first time.
shifting gears to, I don't know if you guys work with vendors or partners, but how do you, because you work so hard to establish a way of working in a culture with your existing team, how do you facilitate a really good and meaningful experience with vendors, partners, if you work with them? And what has been your approach to making sure that it's good and it works and it's not a drain on everybody?
I mean, again, like we have people and vendors that have been around, like food vendors, for example, that we've been working with for years.
And I'm talking specifically on the marketing side, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a topic that gets brought up a lot. And, talking to other marketing leaders, it's like, capacity at some point becomes an issue, skill set becomes an issue. So sometimes, and we value the idea of working with external partners, but you can't just hire them and it works. Like what are some of the things that you've seen you should be staying away from or protecting your team against, and what have you found that works to create like almost the same feel as an internal team?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, and it's a pretty loaded question because you get so many of these guys reaching out to you on a daily basis. Hey, I'll do this for you. Hey, we'll do this. The importance of this. And it's just like, again, like the squirrel and the shiny object comes to mind. It's just like, hey, what is actually going to bring value? What's worth like doing a pilot on? And we test everything. Yeah. So it's just like, for example, we're testing a reputation management tool. Okay. And they're selling us, okay, we'll get this in all 66 locations that you guys have. And I said, no, let's start with 4 locations. We'll roll it out, and in 60 days, we'll revisit it. Mm-hmm. And if you did the things that you said you would do, then, for sure we'll give you the business. Right. And working with them is usually great because they're all just salespeople, and they'll tell you what you want to hear. But ultimately, like, I have no concern to drop them at the drop of a hat. Right. If things aren't working.
And that's like, those are transactional vendors. And, I think that there's different types of partners. Obviously, some of them require like more intimate relationship because it's a day-to-day thing. Yeah. But I agree with your approach, like on those types of vendors, which is very, very specific function they're meant to play. And it's almost a transactional experience. You have to take that approach, which is a little bit different than partners. But what, so you mentioned Joey's is just starting to open stores again. What's the growth trajectory of Streets? And 21 locations now. What's the vision for that brand?
Well, again, there's a fine line, right? Like, it'd be great to sell 100 stores like that, but we do not have the capacity nor the team to be able to handle that kind of volume. So, like, our goal is kind of like, let's see if we can get 10 stores open in the next year. Yeah. That will allow us time to train, more support on the operations side, right? Hopefully some more support on the marketing side. So when we get to the point where we can open 15 to 20 stores a year, we're not scrambling, right? Like we've almost been burned a couple times in the past because we were busy opening stores last year, and we opened 3 stores in 1 week. Yeah. We only have 3 regional managers. And we only have so many like people that we can pull out of the stores to come help with the opens. Right. So it's just like the whole office pretty much emptied out for 3 weeks while we were trying to get all these stores open. Right. And it was chaotic, right? So that happens, and you just want to make sure you build your team as you grow. Right. And keep up with it, because as much as I want to have 100 stores on our board, that's not sustainable at this minute. Yeah. But if we can get 10 and then another 20 open and slowly build our team, now all of a sudden we can do what Barburrito's doing and what some of the big brands are doing, where they're opening a store a week kind of thing. Right. And then you're in, like, now you're sitting in an office of a couple hundred people. Like, it gets crazy at that point. But
in your industry with these QSR brands, consistency is everything. Even though you have a unique approach at Streets in terms of inconsistent consistency. Growth for the sake of growth can be the thing that kills you ultimately, right? Yeah.
And you see it a lot, right? You saw it with Freshie. You see concepts come out hard and fast, and it's unsustainable growth. And then they, a lot of times, cannibalize themselves. You see it with Subway all the time. Like, you see a Subway on this side of the street, a Subway on that side of the street. And it's unfortunate because Subway, as big corporate, they probably don't give a shit because they know they're going to end up closing one store, but the other one will end up surviving. Right. We want all our franchise partners to have success. Right. And, you know, you can't do that if you can't give them the necessary support to do so.
Yeah.
You know, we need to make sure that we're getting to the stores a few times a year and
Yeah.
following up and making sure that they're on top of things. You know, the restaurant industry changes so fast
Yeah.
as far as like with promotions, with new food items and features and all these things that we're doing on a yearly basis, really on a monthly basis, that we need to be able to communicate these things to them to make sure that they're actually following suit.
Right.
Because if our national marketing is saying one thing and customers are coming in and asking for that said promotion and they have no idea what it's about, there's
That
obviously
user
some kind of
experience,
miscommunication, probably due to not having proper support, and support comes with building a team as you continue to grow your brand.
Yeah. I could talk to you about this all day. I have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
The first one I have is, you know, you got a lot of game left in your marketing career. What are you doing currently, or what do you tend to do to keep yourself sharp as a marketer and as a marketing leader? Like, is it other people you engage with to learn from? Is it publications? Like, how do you keep yourself tight?
I think I've started reading a lot of books. I was like totally anti-books for like so long, and I wish that wasn't the case. If I could go back to talk to my 20-year-old self, I'd probably kick him in the ass, like, go read some more books. It was so when my wife bought her Kindle, and it's just like, hey, so it's that easy? Now I could read in bed while you're sleeping? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
there's only about a 5-10 minute window that I could read books anyways, because she goes to bed and starts reading a book and turns out the lights 10 seconds later. It's like 8:45 at night. I'm like, hey, I'm like, you know what I mean? But the Kindle changed things, so really started doing my research on reading books from marketers. But also, like, there's a lot of free information out there. You know, sometimes you'll see those advertisements for like today only $27 for this like course package or whatever. Like, sometimes I'll just pull the trigger and see what they have to say. And sometimes you pull valuable information. I probably have attended 5 or 6 master classes just virtually in the last, 2 months. And it's just easy, and they're free, and like they just want people to get involved. And they're usually brands, like vendors trying to sell you something, but they at least kind of go through what they provide. They're not like blatantly trying to sell you on their specific product, but they go through the process of what they do. And we've pulled a lot of good ideas out of those. And again, it's just surrounding yourself with not only like-minded, but people that are smarter than you. You know, I wouldn't say I know how to do probably a bit of everything my team knows how to do. But when it comes to graphic design, like, I am not trained in Photoshop. I don't know what my girl's doing on like these crazy Adobe suite or whatever. Like, I don't know how to do that. I understand what she's doing, and we give her direction and feedback, and and then I have another guy, we call him the digital marketing analyst. He's the one running the ads, the Google ads, all that. He's trained in that. He's built Shopify stores, and I understand what he's doing, but I don't have the time to necessarily do it, and or as much knowledge.
But you commit to learning at least to understand.
Yes. You got to understand, because eventually there will be turnover, and you want the next guy to know where the last guy left off, right? So I have to understand probably 60% of every single one of what my team members is doing.
So I think that's a call to action to marketing leaders out there. When you have a little bit of extra time, kind of immerse yourself in what's going on, whether that's internally or externally.
Like, learn how to build websites, learn how to, whatever it may be. Like, I've run Facebook ads, I've run Google ads, I've run TikTok ads, I've run Snapchat ads. But do I do it as well as the guy who specializes in it? Hell no. But I at least understand the process, and like, I could probably coach somebody up in layman's terms from a 10,000
and you can
foot
empathize
view.
from a capacity standpoint, right? Because I think that a lot of leaders are like, well, you're a specialist in it, so just do it and do 10 more of them. But I think that empathy
and understand the time that goes into things. It's easy to be like, look at your graphic designer and be like, why the hell isn't this done yet? But then you go stand over her shoulder for 10 minutes and she's like zoomed in 1,000 times and drawing out to really crop this image out. It's just like, now I understand what you're doing. So I understand like the timelines of projects and stuff. And same thing with running ads. We have 66 stores.